Hey everybody, PJ Riley from Lancaster Archery in our video studio today to talk about a product that I didn't think I was ever going to talk to you about. So, this is the Archery Tooling Concepts Spikepress Slider. Why do I say I didn't think I was ever going to talk to you about this? So the Spikepress Slider from Archery Tooling Concepts, this has actually been out for many years. But the company was owned by a gentleman, his name was George, and he had a Greek last name that I am not going to try and pronounce and butcher it. We would see him every year at ATA, and this is kind of what he did in retirement. And he didn't want to build to the scale that, we would need at Lancaster Archery to be able to sell them far and wide. He just wanted to build what, somebody puts in an order, he'll build one, and that's the way it was. So he was never interested in coming into a retail sort of setting, selling his presses that way. Well, enter Eric Griggs of Gas Bowstrings and Accu Archery. He has now acquired the company and has taken on the task of building the Spikepress Slider for the masses. So they're going to be doing that there in Kentucky where Gas and Accu Archery are based. So here we are, Lancaster Archery. We now have the Spikepress Slider for sale, and we wanted to tell you all about it. Before we get into some of the details about it, what I will say is that this is a beefy bow press. This is one that is gonna be able to take some abuse. First off, it's mounted to a table right here, so it's bolted down. This thing is heavy. I believe the press alone weighs like 55 or 60 pounds. And then this tray here, I don't know what this weighs, but this thing's super heavy too. So what I have here is the Spikepress Slider, and I have the accessory tray. That's an add-on, but I have it attached here. Lots of unique things that you're gonna be able to do with the Spikepress. But it is driven by the wheel here, and what's neat is inside the drive mechanism that it's on, the threading that's in there, it allows you to move this press quickly. So you're going to be able to go from super short to super long in a matter of time. You're not going to stand here for minutes just cranking this wheel. So the threads in there allow this to move quickly. And actually, Eric Griggs says he said he's heard comments, hey, why don't you make this a motorized bow press? One of the reasons that he doesn't want to do that is because with the way this moves on the threading in here, if he made it motorized, it would move too quickly. Most of the motorized presses now, you can tap on them and they just slide a little bit. This one would move a lot and that would cause other problems. Besides that, I'm not a fan of motorized presses anyway. I like to do things by hand. You can really dial things in, move it just a little bit rather than sit there and tap that foot pedal. So I like this kind of setup anyway. So that is the drive mechanism there. One of the greatest features, it's the Spikepress Slider. So you're going to be able to use this bow press and press, the biggest target bows, those 40-inch target bows and Raven crossbows, the new 10-point crossbows that are really slender. And that's by this device right here. I'm just going to pull a pin, slide the whole mechanism right down there. Now I am working with super small crossbows. So that's just a great feature there. You don't have to have, if you happen to have a crossbow and a compound bow, or if you're a bow shop, who definitely have both, you don't have to have two presses. You can do everything with one press. So that's a great feature. Now, one thing I do want to tell you is that whenever you get it set to wherever, we're going to press some compound bows here, you do want to come in and lock this down. So I just lifted that pin so I could move it easily, and I locked it into place. But once we're putting things under tension, I'm just going to screw in these 3 bolts here. And then I will not be able to move the slider anymore. So that's just a security factor. Remember, I said this thing is just built heavy duty. Now, let's talk about What we have here, we use pins. This is our pin system here. I'll just pull this one out. So there's going to be lots of different pins. They're going to come in sets of 4, but each what I'll call individual pin is actually 2. You're going to get 2 sets. And what these pins do, this one just for sake of information, this is the Matthews pin. You can see the blades. Those Matthews, the newer Matthews bows, you're going to use these pins for the Matthews bows. And what I have here are 7 different sets of pins. So rather than go through what all of them do, we're going to put up a graphic to describe the different pins and what kind of bows they're going to be used for. But basically, it's going to allow you to press whatever, from crossbows to target bows to older bows, bows that are past parallel. You're going to be able to do all that with one of these sets of pins. One of the coolest things I think about the Spikepress is right here, this little control. You know, today we have bows of varying thicknesses this way. So you're constantly having to align, in this case, the pins of the bow press so that you're pressing in on the center of the limbs. Well, on the Spikepress, that's super easy. We have this right here. This is spring-loaded. And back here, I have a control knob, and I can just turn that in. Now you can see I'm bringing those pins together, or I can separate them farther out as need be. And what I'll say with the pins is, you know, they have this screw holding them together there. The screw it only threads into one of the pins. The other one moves freely. So you just put it in, you dial it to the right distance between the 2 of them, and one can slide freely. Now, it also one of them is slotted so that you can potentially move one forward or back. This is a big deal to me personally. That's controlled right here by these knobs. You can see I am able to move one or the other. Right now, I'm moving this one forward, moving it back. Where does that come in handy? Where that comes in handy, what I immediately think of is when I am trying to remove an axle. So, put my bow in the press, I need to pull the axle. You've got your 2 limbs. How many of us have been there? You push that axle through one limb and then they shift. As soon as the axle comes out of one of the limbs, they shift, and then you're sitting here trying to finagle, you know, twisting limbs and cams to try and get the hole to line up so you can put the axle back in. Well, with this device back here, what I've found, you know, when the bow is under tension, you're not going to be able to move one or the other. But if you back the press out to where it's just resting in there, you take some of that tension off, then you absolutely can move one limb forward or back to get that alignment, and then your axle comes out really easily. So that's huge. You know, I shoot a lot of Matthews bows, changing top hats, have to pull the axle out. This is a huge saver with that. So we also have, you're going to notice, I'll come to a different set of pins here because you wouldn't use those but let's say we have an older style bow. If you're old like me, the bows back in the 90s, the limbs were not nowhere near as parallel as they are today. They stood up more. It was more like a recurve bow. Well, to press those in the Spikepress, you're going to notice we have a 20-degree angle. So these pins and that second 20-degree angle is intended for, among other things, those older bows, so that you're not working, it's just not as good to press them the way you press other bows where your pins are coming straight out. Putting them back at an angle like that, it's just a safer way to press those older bows. Now, you're going to notice we have down here, we have our limb stops, limb blockers. What this is going to do, this is a safety measure. So let's say particularly the passed parallel bows. So passed parallel, I'm going to take my angled fingers there. Probably can see it better when it's in like that. So you can see how they're angled down. That's to deal with those passed parallel bows. PSE Omen, the Hoyt Defiant, that's kind of probably the most famous of the passed parallel bows. So it's naturally, the pins are angled backwards to be able to deal with that passed parallel. Well, then the perpetual issue that you encountered with those bows is once you started pressing, they wanted to shoot out the bottom of the press. That's where your limb stops come in. You can use it on any bow, and certainly why wouldn't you, just for safety, keep it in there. But especially those passed parallel bows, you just have these limb blockers in there, set them up so that when you start to press that bow, there's no way that it can come out the bottom. All right, now just to show you the press in action, I'm going to press my Matthews TRX 40. So I'm going to start out by putting in my Matthews blade pins, and then how easy it is to just get things centered up. I'm going to start out here. Didn't like that, so we're going to bring it a little bit closer. There we go. Now this one's touching, so I want to bring this back a little bit. You want to leave a little gap, obviously, because you're going to be pressing in. But these are my limb stops. And now, what I wanted to show you with the axle, just to show you how easy it is to manipulate the ends here so you can remove an axle. So, you know, an axle, when you take it out of any bow, it should move pretty easily. And so if it doesn't, that tells me that there's uneven tension on one of these limbs on the axle there. So I can come over here to my controls in the back, and you know, I can, while I don't have a lot of tension on here, but I have some, but I can, you know, if I start with a little bit of tension on both, I can back it out. And remember, when you're moving these limbs enough to get the axle out, we're talking about microscopic movements, you know, not even millimeters, smaller than that. It's just a little bit out of line to get this axle to move freely. And then I can come back, and if I am able to push and it moves freely, I know that I'm in the right spot. I'm not going to take the axle all the way out to reassemble the cams, but that axle is moving. I'm moving it, you know, just one finger. So I know that my limbs are perfectly aligned so that I can move that axle in and out. Again, with those controls back there, that is a game changer. All right, now just to do a swap, we just did a 40-inch Matthews target bow. Let's go to something completely different. We've got a 30-inch Expedition next light. So what I would do here, I would start out with taking out my Matthews pins, and I would probably go with standard L pins. All right, once I've got my L pins in there, I'm going to bring it in, set my depth, or my distance between the two, get my limb blockers in the right position, okay? And now I'm pressing a completely different bow. All right, so when you buy the Archery Tooling Concepts Spikepress Slider from us, what you're going to do is you're going to notice on the product page that there's the spike press and then all the different pins. So you're going to pick which pin set you want to come with the press. So the price that you see listed includes the press and one set of pins that you pick. Then any other pins that you want on top of that, those would be add-ons. But you will get the press with one set of pins that are of your choosing. If you want to see all the options that we have available with this press, Be sure to click the link in the description below. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click that bell to get notifications whenever we put out new videos. As always, if you have any questions, you can visit us at lancasterarchery.com.